I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune Reset, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to this Friday 5 episode of the Autoimmune Reset podcast. I'm your host VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist and expert in autoimmune disease. And today I want to talk to you about testing because this is probably one of the most common questions I get asked in clinic and online. And people will message me saying, I've had my ferritin checked, my thyroid checked, everything looks normal. So why is my hair still falling out? And I completely understand the frustration because that was me when I was going through these cycles of hair loss. There was a few things that would come up on my test results, but nothing that the doctor was concerned about. And that can lead to frustration, as I know. When you're losing your hair, you know that everything isn't fine. That's when I realized that I needed to start digging deeper. I ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I realized that my hair loss probably wasn't just about my hair or my scalp. It was something happening inside. The thing about blood tests is they can tell you what is happening, but they don't tell you why it's happening. So if you do have low ferritin, it might not be as straightforward as the reason being that you're not eating enough iron-rich foods. There's probably more to it. And low ferritin can be a sign of celiac disease. It can be a sign that you're deficient in other nutrients. So it's a clue, but it doesn't give you the cause. So today I want to walk you through the 5 functional tests I actually use in practice for alopecia and hair thinning. And honestly, these are the exact ones I used myself when I was rebuilding my own health. Not everything, not 20 tests, just the ones that give you the most clinical leverage, because hair is never the root of the problem. It is giving you a sign. It's a thing your body lets go of when something deeper is struggling. It's not going to prioritize hair growth when you have other more important processes or systems in the body that might not be working as effectively. And if your body is in survival mode, it really isn't going to prioritize hair growth. So we always have to ask, what is happening upstream? And that's what these tests can reveal. So the first test is one of my favorites, and I shouldn't really say that because it's a bit strange, but it's stool testing. And yes, I almost always will start with the gut when I'm working with a client. And I know people sometimes expect me to say hormones or low ferritin or nutrient deficiencies, but for me, it's the gut nearly every time, because if you can't digest, if you can't absorb your food and regulate inflammation properly in the gut, it honestly doesn't matter how many supplements you take. They're not going to have the same effect if your digestion isn't working effectively. You could be wasting a lot of money if you are taking a lot of supplements at the moment, because your gut controls so many things. It controls how you absorb nutrients. It also regulates the immune system. It manages inflammation and modulates inflammation. It helps with hormone clearance and even production of things like biotin and short-chain fatty acids. So it's foundational. And I often get asked about the difference between the certain stool tests on the market. And there is a new one called the Microbiome Explorer, which I have just started using with clients. And I'm very excited about it. I went to quite a lot of health conferences last year and they were talking about it. It can be quite confusing when you see these different tests. So the Microbiome Explorer is more of a DNA mapping test when it comes to your gut microbiome. It tells you which bacteria are there, the diversity levels, the ecosystem patterns. So it's really brilliant if you want to see a big picture view of your terrain. And that tells us a lot as well. And I think this is going to be so effective when I'm working with children who have autoimmune disease and alopecia, and also more complex immune cases. So think of it as looking at the forest, whereas the GI effects, which is one of the stool tests that I have been using since I started practicing, to be honest, and I love the GI effects because I've used it so many times that I can spot patterns very quickly. And it will show you if you have digestive enzymes, inflammatory markers, secretory IgA, which is a really important part of the immune system in the gut, parasites, yeast, short-chain fatty acids, and how well you're actually breaking down and absorbing food. So it tells me how the gut is performing day to day. It's more like asking, is the forest actually working properly? Because for adults with alopecia, I often start with the GI effects because I want to know things like, are you actually absorbing your iron? Are you inflamed? Is there dysbiosis or yeast that's stealing nutrients? Because sometimes ferritin is low, not because you're not eating enough iron, as I said earlier, it's because you simply aren't absorbing it. And if we don't fix that, we just chase our tails, and that's not a position that we want to be in. The next test that I often suggest is the Dutch test, which looks at hormones and stress. And hair is incredibly sensitive to stress and the hormones that we produce and the neurotransmitters we produce in response to stress. And it affects you way more than you actually realize. And cortisol alone can push hair into that shedding mode, that telogen phase of the hair growth cycle. So your hair just isn't going to grow. So if someone says to me, my hair started falling out after a stressful year or burnout or perimenopause, I immediately think hormones. The Dutch test shows your cortisol rhythm across the day, DHEA, which is an important precursor for your hormones. It will show estrogen metabolism, whether you have too much estrogen or too little estrogen, if your detox pathways are sluggish, what your progesterone levels are. And this is so helpful because it's not just high or low, it's giving me a pattern. And that's what I'm always seeking to find out for my clients, the pattern, because that tells me so much. Maybe you're wired at night and exhausted in the morning. Maybe you're not clearing estrogen well. Maybe you're flatlined and burnt out, because it's not always about high cortisol. It can be low cortisol too. And all of those patterns affect hair growth. For me personally, this one was huge. And when I regulated my cortisol rhythm, I noticed that I felt calmer in my body, and all the good work that I was doing with nutrition and the lifestyle changes I was making, I could feel were making more of a difference. And that's when I had that sustainable hair growth, when I wasn't going through those cycles of hair loss with alopecia. So it isn't about adding more nutrients. It's about telling your nervous system it's safe for your hair to grow again. And if you are in that fight or flight state, you're not going to get to that position. You might be able to do enough with having lots of nutrients which support the stress response, but honestly, it will go so much further if you calm down the system. And that's what that test can help us show, as well as the sex hormones. The next test is the Metabolomix, and this is one of my favorite tests, and honestly one of the most underrated, because hair growth is incredibly energy expensive. If your mitochondria are struggling, those powerhouse organelles of the cells which produce energy, your body will prioritize survival over hair every single time. And the Metabolomix looks at your B vitamin status, antioxidants, it looks for some mitochondrial markers, whether you have any issue with detoxification, neurotransmitter imbalance, and clues about dysbiosis and yeast overgrowth as well. And there is a marker there which gives you an indication whether mold toxicity might be an issue for you too. So instead of getting supplements, you can take a really targeted approach. And when I ran mine years ago, my B vitamins and antioxidants were really low, especially vitamin B12, which I still struggle with today. And that's partly due to some genetic variations that I have. But it made such a difference knowing this, because I've just felt heard all of a sudden, because it explained why I had fatigue and why I was experiencing hair issues and why my skin just kept flaring up. And once I supported those pathways properly, everything shifted, and it just takes out the guesswork. So I love running the Metabolomix. I mean, the two tests that I run the most with clients are the Metabolomix and the stool test, because those two tests combined can tell you so much. The next test is the mycotoxin testing. And this one surprises people, but mold exposure is incredibly inflammatory. And I see it quite often in alopecia because many people with alopecia have histamine issues. They might have mast cell activation syndrome. They generally have more of an allergic response. So they're going to be more sensitive to mold. So if somebody has fatigue, they might have brain fog, sinus issues, maybe some strange sensitivities like chemical sensitivities, or they just aren't responding to anything when they've made changes to their diet, worked on their gut, I start thinking about hidden toxic load, because if the immune system is constantly fighting something environmental, it doesn't feel safe enough to prioritize hair growth. And honestly, hair growth requires safety. It's something I've learned over the years. And mold can quietly keep the immune system in fight mode for years. Sometimes it's not what you're missing, it's what you're being exposed to. So give that some thought as well. And finally, number 5 is food reactivity testing. And the one I particularly like is the P88 dietary antigen test, because it looks at lots of different markers when it comes to your reaction to foods. Because it's not about cutting out everything forever, and it's not about fear. It's, these extreme elimination diets. I try as best as I can not to recommend those to clients unless I think that it's really necessary, because it's about temporarily reducing immune load. And that's why the P88 dietary antigen test is good, because it looks at delayed immune reactions. And for some people, just removing 3 or 4 reactive foods for a few months can dramatically lower inflammation. And I've seen it a lot with my clients who are having skin issues, that they take out these foods and then their skin, it's almost like it happens overnight. I mean, it doesn't happen that quickly, but their skin clears up so quickly, and they might have been living that way for years. So it does feel like a very quick reaction to it, or maybe the reaction's not the right word, but response to it. I even had a client message me. They had been dabbling with a bit of gluten here and there for years. And I just said, just completely stop it. Just do it for a month, 6 weeks, and see what happens. And they did, and they messaged me, and they just could not believe the difference that it made, just cutting it out completely. And obviously that's personalized to them, but that could be the same for you. And it might not be gluten, it might be a different food, but it is worth looking into that as well, especially if you find that you are reacting to lots of foods. It gives your immune system that space to reset, and it's about strategy. It's not about being restrictive, and it's about bringing those foods back as much as you can. And often, as I said, it's surprisingly powerful. So yes, check your ferritin levels, check thyroid, absolutely. But if you want the why, if you want to stop the firefighting, if you actually want to rebuild from the root, these are the tests that change my health. They're the ones that I use every week with my clients, because alopecia isn't random. It usually is happening for a reason. And I have always used my hair loss or skin flares or joint issues as information. And once you understand what your body is trying to tell you, it becomes so much less overwhelming and so much more actionable. So if this was helpful, save it, share it with somebody you know. And if you have any questions, you can pop over to my Instagram, which is at the Autoimmune Nutritionist, and ask me any questions over there. You can also join my free group, the Autoimmune Forum. And if you are ready to start making changes to your health today, then download my free guide, the Autoimmunity Recovery Plan. It gives you a step-by-step approach to changing your health for the better, and you can get started with that this weekend. I will see you again next Friday. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time. And remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.